I never thought I'd be the kind of person to get fired. Not for something as petty as lacking talent. Anyway, sure, I wasn't the loudest voice in the room at Nexratech, but I work harder than most people there. My name is Alex Hartman, and I pour my soul into Project Helios, a groundbreaking AI platform that could have revolutionized customer service automation. But apparently, working hard and being quiet doesn't cut it when you're surrounded by sharks like Victoria Langley, our CEO. She had a way of making everyone feel expendable, like pieces on her chessboard she could move or discard at will. San Francisco was buzzing with tech startups and ambition back then, and Nexra was no exception. It was one of those places where people wore their busyness like badges of honor, bragging about how many hours they clocked in or how little sleep they got. Sophie Bennett, my best friend and co-worker, always joked that we were living in a dystopian novel where caffeine was the only currency. "You need to speak up more, Alex," she'd tell me over lunch. "They don't see your value unless you shove it in their faces." Easy for her to say. Sophie had charisma oozing out of every pore. Me? I preferred solving problems behind the scenes. That approach had worked fine until now. It happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are supposed to be mundane, right? Paycheck day, grocery shopping, maybe some laundry if you're feeling ambitious. But this Tuesday changed everything. Victoria called me into her office. Her voice clipped and cold even before I sat down. "Alex," she began without preamble, "we've decided to let you go. Your performance hasn't met expectations." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to stay calm. "I've been leading Project Helios." "Yes, and progress has been slow," she interrupted, leaning back in her chair like she owned the damn world. "We can't afford to wait around for someone who lacks the drive and talent to deliver results." Lacks talent. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to argue, to remind her of all the late nights and weekends I'd sacrificed for this project. But what would be the point? In that moment, I realized something. Victoria didn't care. To her, I was just another number on a spreadsheet. As I packed up my desk later, Greg, the smug jerk from marketing, stopped by. "Tough break, Alex," he said, his tone dripping with fake sympathy. He glanced at my notes scattered across the table and smirked. Something about the way he looked at them made my stomach churn. I didn't know it yet, but that smirk would haunt me for months to come. Being unemployed in San Francisco felt like walking through a battlefield wearing a neon target on my chest. Everyone here seemed to have their lives together, except me. I took odd jobs to pay rent, delivering food, tutoring coding beginners online, but nothing filled the void left by Nexra. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake replaying Victoria's words in my head. Someone who lacks the drive and talent. Was she right? Had I really been fooling myself all along? Sophie tried to keep my spirits up. "You'll bounce back, Alex," she insisted during one of our coffee meetups. "The city eats people alive, but you're tougher than that. Besides, haven't you noticed how weird Greg's been acting lately? He's taking credit for your work, isn't he?" Her question sent a chill down my spine. Sure enough, a few days later, I saw an article online announcing Nexra's upcoming launch of Project Helios, with Greg listed as the lead developer. Rage bubbled inside me, but beneath it lay something deeper. Shame. How could I have let this happen? I should have fought harder, spoken louder, done something. Instead, I was stuck delivering burritos while Greg basked in the glory of my idea. The breaking point came one rainy afternoon when I stumbled upon an old flash drive tucked away in my backpack. It contained backups of all my notes and prototypes for Project Helios. As I scrolled the files, a strange mix of emotions washed over me. Nostalgia, anger, and hope. Maybe Sophie was right. Maybe I still had something worth fighting for. That night, I called her. "I'm going to rebuild Project Helios," I declared, surprising even myself with how firm my voice sounded. "But I need your help." She laughed, half amused and half proud. "About time. You've been moping around long enough. What's the plan?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm not letting Greg or Victoria win. Not this time." Over the next few weeks, I started sketching out ideas and reaching out to potential investors. Most of them dismissed me outright. Too risky, not polished enough. Who are you again? But I refused to give up. Then, one fateful evening, I met Eleanor Whitmore. Eleanor wasn't what I expected. She walked into a cafe where we'd agreed to meet wearing tailored jeans and a leather jacket, looking more like a rock star than a retired venture capitalist. Her sharp eyes scanned me as she slid into the booth across from me. "So, you're the kid trying to take down Nexera?" she said, raising an eyebrow. Trying was the operative word. I shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, well, sort of. I just want to prove that my work matters." She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "Proving things costs money, kiddo. Do you have any idea how much it takes to build a company from scratch?" "No," I admitted, "but I'm willing to learn." For a moment, she studied me silently. Then, to my astonishment, she smiled. "Good answer. Let's talk numbers." Eleanor became my lifeline. With her guidance, I secured seed funding and officially founded Helion Labs. For the first time since leaving Nexera, I felt like I had purpose again. But deep down, I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. And honestly, that scared the hell out of me. The day I signed the paperwork to officially launch Helion Labs, I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and terror. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that one misstep could send me plummeting, but also knowing that taking the leap might just let me fly. Eleanor had warned me about the challenges ahead, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality of building a startup from scratch. Our first office wasn't much to look at, a cramped space above a coffee shop in the Mission District. But it was ours. Sophie helped me paint the walls white. "It makes the room feel bigger," she insisted, and hung up a neon sign that read, "Innovate or Die." Cheesy? Absolutely. But it became our mantra, a reminder of why we were doing this in the first place. We didn't have a massive team or endless resources, but we had passion, and for now, that felt like enough. Still, doubts crept in late at night when the city lights outside my window blurred into streaks of gold and red. What if I failed again? What if Nexera crushed us before we even got off the ground? I shook those thoughts away as best I could, focusing instead on the tiny victories. Hiring our first developer, finalizing our logo, securing a meeting with a potential client. Each step forward felt monumental, even if no one else noticed yet. Running a startup is like trying to build a plane while flying it. And let me tell you, turbulence is inevitable. Our initial hires were enthusiastic but inexperienced, and coordinating everyone's efforts often felt like herding cats. One morning, I walked into the office to find two engineers arguing over whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It doesn't, by the way. Another time, our marketing intern accidentally emailed our pitch deck to the wrong company. Oops. Then there were the bigger issues, the kind that kept me awake long after everyone else had gone home. Money, for starters. Even with Eleanor's funding, every dollar felt precious, and I agonized over every expense. Should we splurge on ergonomic chairs for the team, or stick with the wobbly ones we'd scavenged from Craigslist? Could we afford to hire another developer, or should I try to code more of the platform myself? And then there was a competition. Rumors swirled that Nexera was rushing to release their version of Project Helios sooner than expected. Every article praising Greg's visionary leadership made my blood boil. How dare he take credit for something he barely understood? Still, I forced myself to focus on what mattered, making sure Helion Labs delivered something better, something real. Just when things seemed to be falling into place, disaster struck. A tech blogger published an expose claiming that Helion Labs had stolen intellectual property from Nexera Tech. According to the article, Greg himself had come forward with evidence proving that my work was based on confidential materials I'd taken from the company. The accusation spread like wildfire, and within hours, social media was ablaze with outrage. I stared at my phone in disbelief, reading comment after comment calling me a fraud. How low can you go? One person tweeted, "Stealing ideas and lying about it? Disgusting." Another chimed in, "Typical Silicon Valley drama. No wonder people hate tech brothers." Sophie found me pacing the office later that evening, clutching my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "This is bullshit," she said firmly. "You know it and I know it. Don't let them get inside your head." But it was hard not to. Some of our key employees started questioning whether they'd made the right choice joining Helion Labs. One of our lead developers quit outright, citing concerns about legal repercussions. For the first time since launching the company, I wondered if we'd survive. If Greg wanted to play dirty, fine. I'd play dirtier. With Sophie's help, I hired a lawyer named Marcus Chun, who specialized in corporate espionage cases. He agreed to investigate Nexera's claims, though he warned me up front that proving innocence wouldn't be easy. Tech companies love throwing around IP lawsuits, he explained. They're hoping you'll fold under the pressure. We combed through every line of code, every email, every document related to Project Helios. Slowly but surely, cracks began to form in Greg's story. First, we discovered that large portions of Nexera's codebase were lifted directly from open-source repositories without proper attribution, a violation of licensing agreements. Then, we uncovered emails between Greg and Victoria discussing how to spin my departure as a mutual decision. Most damning of all, we found timestamps showing that Greg hadn't touched the project until weeks after I'd left Nexera. By the time we presented our findings to Marcus, I was trembling with a mix of anger and relief. "This is solid," he said, flipping through the documents. "Enough to turn the tables on them, maybe even countersue." For the first time in days, I allowed myself to smile. Karma, it seemed, was finally on my side. With the evidence in hand, we launched a counteroffensive. Marcus drafted a scathing letter to Nexera's legal team, threatening to expose their unethical practices unless they dropped the lawsuit. Meanwhile, I worked tirelessly to prepare Helion Labs' beta version for release. If we timed it right, we could steal the spotlight entirely and prove once and for all whose vision truly mattered. The race against Nexera consumed every waking moment. Late nights blurred into early mornings as I juggled coding, PR strategy, and damage control. Sophie tried to convince me to delegate more tasks, but I couldn't bring myself to let go. This was my fight, my redemption, and I wasn't about to trust anyone else with it. As the launch date approached, tension crackled in the air like static electricity. Would we pull it off? Or would Nexera crush us before we had a chance to shine? Either way, I knew one thing for certain. This battle wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about proving that integrity still had a place in Silicon Valley, even if it meant burning bridges along the way. The night before the beta launch, I barely slept. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if the platform crashed? What if users hated it? What if Greg somehow sabotaged us at the last minute? But as dawn broke over San Francisco, I reminded myself of one simple truth. I'd already faced worse. If I could survive being fired and smeared in public, I could handle whatever came next. At 9 a.m., we flipped the switch. Within minutes, our servers lit up with activity. Users flooded in, some curious tech enthusiasts, others industry insiders looking for the next big thing. Feedback started pouring in almost immediately. "This is incredible," one user tweeted. "So intuitive and fast. Finally, AI that actually works." Another commented, "Nexera's version feels like a clunky mess compared to this." For the first time in months, I allowed myself to exhale. Sophie walked into the office holding 2 cups of coffee, grinning from ear to ear. "You did it, Alex," she said, handing me a cup. "Look at the numbers, they're skyrocketing." And she was right. Download surged past our wildest expectations, and positive reviews poured in faster than we could respond. It wasn't just validation, it was vindication. Every line of code, every sleepless night, every ounce of doubt, it all felt worth it in that moment. For the first time since leaving Nexera, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Just when I thought we were in the clear, Nexera struck back. 2 days after our beta launch, their lawyers filed a lawsuit against Helion Labs, accusing us of copyright infringement and demanding $50 million in damages. The news hit like a freight train, sending shockwaves through the tech community. Reporters swarmed outside our tiny office, shouting questions about stolen IP and corporate espionage. Social media erupted again, though this time opinions were divided. Some defended us, pointing to the glowing reviews of our product. Others sided with Nexera, calling us opportunists who had crossed ethical lines. Marcus assured me we had a strong case, But the legal battle would be long and grueling. They're trying to bleed you dry, he explained during an emergency meeting. Even if we win, the process will drain your resources and distract you from growing the company. I wanted to scream. After everything we'd been through, how could they still twist a narrative like this? But deep down, I knew Marcus was right. A courtroom showdown wouldn't just affect Helion Labs. It would define us. And I refused to let fear dictate my next move. As the lawsuit dominated headlines, Eleanor called an impromptu meeting. She arrived at the office unannounced, her usual confidence replaced by an uneasy tension. "We need to talk," she said, motioning for me to join her in the conference room. Once inside, she closed the door and turned to face me. "There's something you should know," she began, her voice unusually soft. "I didn't fund Helion Labs purely out of altruism. When I retired from Nexury years ago, I left on less than friendly terms with Victoria." My stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I saw an opportunity to stick it to her," Eleanor admitted, avoiding my gaze. "But that doesn't mean I don't believe in you, Alex. You're brilliant, and your work deserves to succeed. Maybe I used you to settle old scores." Her confession hit me like a gut punch. All this time, I trusted her implicitly. Was Helion Labs nothing more than a pawn in her personal vendetta? Anger bubbled up inside me, but beneath it lay sadness and confusion. Did her motives even matter anymore? Our fight against Nexra wasn't just hers or mine. It belonged to everyone who believed in what we were building. "I need some time to think," I told her finally, standing to leave. As I walked out, I couldn't shake the feeling that the ground beneath me was shifting once again. That evening, I met Sophie at our favorite dive bar. Over cheap beers and greasy fries, I spilled everything Eleanor had confessed. To my surprise, Sophie didn't seem shocked. "Honestly, Alex, I figured as much," she said, sipping her drink. "Eleanor's always been shrewd. But does it change anything? You've built this company because you believe in it, not because of her." Her words lingered in my mind as I lay awake that night. Maybe she was right. Maybe Eleanor's motives didn't define Helion Labs. Still, her betrayal stung. Trust was fragile, and once broken, it wasn't easily repaired. The next morning, I confronted Eleanor. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice trembling with frustration. "Did you think I wouldn't care?" She sighed, looking older than I'd ever seen her. "I was afraid you'd walk away," she admitted. "And I couldn't risk losing someone like you, not again." Her vulnerability caught me off guard. For all her flaws, Eleanor had invested in me when no one else would. Could I really turn my back on her now? "Just promise me one thing," I said finally. "No more secrets. Moving forward, we're equals in this." She nodded solemnly. "Deal." The day of the trial arrived, and the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Reporters packed the benches, cameras flashing as Victoria strode in wearing a power suit tailored to perfection. Greg sat beside her, fidgeting nervously. On our side, Marcus stood calm and collected, his briefcase brimming with evidence. When it was my turn to testify, I took a deep breath and stepped up to the stand. "My name is Alex Hartman," I began, my voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I created Project Helios, not Greg, not anyone else. Everything you see in Helion Labs' platform comes from my vision, my hard work, and my belief in creating something meaningful." I recounted the months spent developing the prototype, the late nights ignored by Nexra's leadership, and the smear campaign that followed my departure. Then, with Marcus's guidance, I presented the damning evidence. Greg's plagiarism, Nexra's misuse of open-source code, and emails proving their attempt to discredit me. The room fell silent as the judge reviewed the documents. When she finally spoke, her verdict sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds in favor of Helion Labs. All charges against them are dismissed. Cheers erupted from our team, but I stayed frozen in place, overwhelmed by the enormity of the moment. Justice had been served, but at what cost? Winning the lawsuit should have felt like the ultimate triumph, but instead, it left me hollow. Nexra's stock plummeted overnight, and Victoria resigned in disgrace. Greg vanished from the spotlight altogether, his reputation in tatters. Yet none of it brought me the satisfaction I'd imagined. That night, I wandered through the empty streets of San Francisco, replaying the events of the past year in my mind. Had it all been worth it? Sure, Helion Labs was thriving, and our platform was changing lives. But the scars ran deep. The betrayal, the lies, the endless battles. In fighting to prove myself, had I become the very thing I despised? Sophie found me sitting on a park bench, staring at the city lights. "You okay?" she asked, sitting beside me. "I don't know," I admitted. "Is winning supposed to feel this empty?" She smiled softly. "Maybe it's not about winning or losing. Maybe it's about what you do next." Her words stuck with me as we walked home together. For the first time, I realized that true success wasn't about defeating others. It was about building something better, something enduring, something real. In the weeks following the lawsuit, life at Helion Labs settled into a strange rhythm. On paper, we were on top of the world. Our beta launch had been a smash hit, and the legal victory silenced any lingering doubts about our legitimacy. But beneath the surface, things weren't as rosy. Some team members struggled to adjust to the sudden attention. Others felt burned out from months of relentless pressure. Even I, who should have been basking in triumph, found myself grappling with an unexpected sense of emptiness. One afternoon, while reviewing user feedback, I stumbled across a comment that stopped me cold. "This platform is amazing," the user wrote, "but it almost feels too good to be true. Who's behind this?" It wasn't malicious, it was curious, but it struck a nerve. Despite everything we'd achieved, Helion Labs still felt like a shadowy underdog, overshadowed by Nexera's former dominance. How could we move past being defined by what we'd overcome? Sophie noticed my mood during our weekly check-in. "You're thinking too much again," she teased, nudging my shoulder. "We won, Alex. Let yourself enjoy it for once." "I know," I replied, sighing, "but winning doesn't fix everything. Look at us. We're exhausted, stressed, and still fighting old battles. When does it end?" She leaned back in her chair, studying me thoughtfully. "Maybe when you stop seeing this as revenge and start seeing it as reinvention. You got a chance to build something completely different from Nexera. Why not take it?" Her words lingered long after our meeting ended. Reinvention. Could I really let go of the anger that had fueled me for so long? And if I did, what would be left? Determined to honor Sophie's advice, I called an all-hands meeting to discuss our next steps. Here's the thing. I began pacing in front of the team. We've proven we can compete with the big players. But now, I want us to do something bigger. I want Helion Labs to stand for more than just great technology. Let's create a workplace where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to innovate. The room buzzed with excitement as ideas flowed freely. We implemented flexible work hours, mental health days, and transparent decision-making processes. For the first time, I prioritized hiring not just for skill but for cultural fit. People who shared our vision of collaboration over competition. Slowly but surely, the toxic energy that haunted me at Nexera began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose and belonging. Even Greg reached out one day, his tone uncharacteristically humble. "Alex, I owe you an apology," he said over phone. "I took credit for your work because I was scared. Scared of failing, scared of looking weak. Can you ever forgive me?" Part of me wanted to hang up, to tell him exactly how much damage he'd caused. But instead, I listened. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing to move forward without letting bitterness anchor me to the past. "I accept your apology," I told him finally. "But don't make the same mistake twice." He sounded genuinely relieved. "Thank you. That means a lot." Eleanor's confession continued to weigh on me. But rather than push her away, I decided to confront her motives head-on. Over coffee, I asked a question that had been gnawing at me for weeks. "Why did you really invest in Helion Labs?" She hesitated, stirring her latte absent-mindedly. "When I retired from Nexera, I swore I'd never set foot in that world again. But watching Victoria destroy talented people like you, it reminded me of why I left in the first place. I saw potential in you, Alex, not just as a developer, but as someone who could challenge the status quo. Yes, I wanted to see Victoria fail. But more importantly, I wanted to see you succeed. Her honesty caught me off guard. Despite her manipulative tactics, Eleanor had believed in me when no one else would. Maybe that was enough. A few days later, she announced her decision to step down as an advisor. "It's time for you to lead on your own terms," she said, handing me a leather-bound book titled The Art of Leadership. "Promise me you'll use your power wisely." "I will," I promised, clutching the gift tightly. As she walked away, I realized she wasn't just stepping aside, she was passing the torch. Months passed, and Helion Labs continued to thrive. Our platform became the gold standard for AI-driven customer service, earning accolades from industry leaders and users alike. Yet the most surprising development came when Victoria resurfaced, not as a rival, but as a reformed advocate. She founded a nonprofit organization called Tech Equity Alliance, dedicated to supporting marginalized workers in the tech industry. During a press conference announcing its launch, she credited Helion Labs for inspiring her transformation. "Losing to Alex taught me that success isn't measured by profit margins or market share," she admitted. "It's about the lives you touch along the way." Her speech went viral, sparking conversations about ethics and accountability in Silicon Valley. While some dismissed her efforts as a PR stunt, I chose to believe in her sincerity. After all, redemption wasn't reserved for heroes. It belonged to anyone willing to try. On the anniversary of my firing from Nexera, I returned to the cafe where Eleanor and I had first met. Sitting in the same booth, I reflected on how far I'd come, from betrayal and self-doubt to vindication and growth. Every twist and turn had shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. As I sipped my coffee, a stranger approached me, holding a flyer for Helion Labs. "Excuse me," they said hesitantly. "Are you Alex Hartman?" "Yes," I replied, smiling. "Why do you ask?" The stranger grinned sheepishly. "Your platform changed my business and my life. I just want to say thank you." For the first time in years, tears welled up in my eyes, not from pain but from gratitude. True success wasn't about defeating others or proving myself right. It was about creating ripples of positive change, however small. 1 year later, Helion Labs hosted its annual Innovation Summit. Standing on stage before a packed auditorium, I delivered a keynote speech about resilience, creativity, and the importance of fostering inclusive workplaces. Success isn't about climbing over others to reach the top, I concluded. It's about lifting each other up and building something better together. The audience erupted into applause, but the real validation came afterward, as attendees lined up to share their stories. Entrepreneurs, developers, students, they all spoke of how Helion Labs had inspired them to chase their dreams. Each story reinforced what I already knew. The impact of our work extended far beyond profits or patents. That evening, as the summit wound down, Eleanor joined me on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city. "Proud of you, kiddo," she said, raising her glass. "You've come a long way since that rainy Tuesday." I laughed, clinking my glass against hers. "Thanks to you, for better or worse." She smirked. "Mostly better, I hope." We stood there in comfortable silence, watching the skyline shimmer under the stars. For the first time, I felt at peace, not just with my journey, but with the lessons it had taught me. Revenge might satisfy temporary wounds, but lasting fulfillment came from empowering others. By choosing empathy over resentment, I transformed pain into purpose, a legacy far greater than any rivalry. The final scene played out quietly, almost poetically. As I strolled through the streets of San Francisco, I paused beneath a billboard advertising Helion Labs. A passerby stopped me, echoing the sentiment I'd heard so many times before. "You changed my life," they said simply. I nodded, humbled yet proud. My journey hadn't been perfect, but it had been meaningful. Every setback, every victory, every moment of doubt and triumph, it had all led me here, to a place where I could look back without regret and forward with hope. Because sometimes the greatest victories aren't the ones we win against others. They're the ones we win within ourselves.